The rundown, low-class part of your city is having some improvements made to make it more appealing to the middle and upper-class people moving there. Sounds exciting, but at what price does that come? We're going to learn about what that price is in today's video, The Issue of Gentrification. I post video essays about a lot of social justice issues, history, philosophy, and sociology here at the Autistic Advocate. After we unpack the complex issue of gentrification, why don't you check out my channel page to see if that's something worth subscribing to? Spoiler alert, it is. First and foremost, what exactly is gentrification? Historians say the practice of gentrification dates all the way back to ancient Rome, where large villas frequently replaced smaller shops, only it wasn't given a name until 1964. Gentry is a term commonly used to refer to people who have at least some degree of wealth. In fact, it comes from an old French word for gentle birth. Ergo, gentrification is the process of gentry coming into poor neighborhoods and adapting them to their liking. It was given its name by British sociologist Ruth Glass, as she described a phenomenon taking place in the working class districts of London, particularly Islington. One by one, many of the working class neighborhoods of London have been invaded by the middle classes, upper and lower. Shabby, modest mews and cottages, 2 rooms up and 2 down, have been taken over when their leases have expired and become elegant, expensive residences. Once this process of gentrification starts in a district, it goes on rapidly until all or most of the original working class occupiers are displaced and the whole social character of the district is changed. As the Center for Disease Control puts it in a report entitled Health Effects of Gentrification, it's the transformation of neighborhoods from low value to high value. This change has the potential to cause displacement of longtime residents and businesses. When longtime or original neighborhood residents move from a gentrified area because of higher rents, mortgages, and property taxes. American economists describe gentrification as a natural cycle. The well-to-do prefer to live in the newest housing stock. Each decade of a city's growth, a new ring of housing is built. When the housing at the center has reached the end of its useful life and becomes cheap, the well-to-do gentrify the neighborhood. The push outward from the city center continues as the housing in each ring reaches the end of its economic life. Depending on which class you're in, you're going to see gentrification in one of 3 ways. A, great, the value of my house is going up. B, coffee is so expensive now that we have a Starbucks. Or C, my neighbors and I can't afford to live here anymore, so where are we gonna go? Now that we know what gentrification is, how and why does it happen? In Gentrification, Displacement, and Neighborhood Revitalization, John Palin and Bruce London list what they believe to be the top 5 reasons why gentrification has been so rampant since the 1970s. The first is demographic ecological. Dual white-collar wage earners with fewer children wanted to live closer to work and thus moved to the inner city. The second is sociocultural. Middle and upper middle class families developed more pro-urban views and thus started moving to inner cities and revamping them to their liking at the expense of those who already lived there. The third reason, which is political economical, is that the decreasing availability of suburban land prompted more high-income individuals to live in urban areas. The fourth is that technological advances in transportation and communication prompted more people to live in large-scale communities. Last but not least, when high-status elites and institutions sought to revive the inner cities, more high-income individuals moved there. Some have argued that the counterculture movement of the 1960s created disdain for the standardization of look-alike suburbs, prompting people to live in urban areas. What's ironic about this is that in doing so, these people became the very problem they were trying to solve with the counterculture movement. So what does this lead to? I know this video is supposed to be about how gentrification is bad, but it does have some positive effects, at least on the gentrifiers, even if not those displaced by it. After all, if there weren't any goals in mind, even the most misguided, no one would do it. Studies have shown that when neighborhoods are gentrified, the crime rate is reduced, consumer purchasing power at local businesses goes up, declining areas are stabilized, property values increase, and vacancy rates decrease. But is any of this really worth the negative effects? First and foremost, those who originally lived there have to find a new place to live and sometimes even become homeless because the rent and local business prices have skyrocketed beyond their reach. Studies have proven that this can have direct adverse effects on the physical and mental health of the displaced population, even as the air quality, safety, and availability of health care increase in the neighborhood being gentrified. At least in theory, those who originally lived there are displaced to areas with even lower air quality and even more barriers to health care. It takes a toll on their mental health via the high stress levels that come with having to move and make do in even less than ideal housing. This is made worse by being separated from the social network they once had. Even those of the original residents who remain in their neighborhood have less money to spend on regular and unexpected health care costs as they're forced to spend more on their rent. To add insult to injury, they're forced to compromise the quality of their groceries and also may have a greater compulsion to emotional eat, which puts them at greater risk for obesity. The change gentrification brings in class distinction has also been shown to contribute to residential polarization by income, education, household composition, and race. Gentrification not only displaces the people who live in these neighborhoods, but hurts small businesses within them. Part of the process of gentrification is that major chains and franchises bring competition to the area, which distinctive small businesses have to be very lucky to be able to withstand. The already impoverished employees are put out of work, exacerbating their financial situation. Moreover, the new community in the gentrified area is negatively affected by resentment from the displaced community. The social diversity that once breathed life into the neighborhood is lost, and as the process continues, the cost of everything keeps going up until fewer and fewer people can afford them. Gentrification doesn't happen all at once. It's a process. It all starts when people who tend to lean left on the political spectrum these days find a neighborhood that's both cheap to live in and has a culture that's to their liking. Many of these people are artists, writers, and musicians. For many of them, their cultural emancipation from the bourgeois makes the central city an appealing alternative that distances them from the conformity and mundaneness attributed to suburban life. Apart from housing being affordable for people with low, unstable incomes and employment, they might, however misguidedly, see an opportunity to put their art skills to use by rehabilitating a neighborhood in which they mostly see deteriorated, run-down buildings and property. I hate to say this about a community I try so hard to support here at The Advocate who's autistic, but the LGBTQ community is also sometimes complicit in the first few steps of gentrification. What's ironic about this is, just like with the other people I mentioned, LGBTQ people often move to minority-dominated neighborhoods, fleeing oppression, and in the process perpetuate oppression, even if they never really meant to. I'm not being homophobic, I'm just stating facts, as I've been doing this whole time and always try to do in all my videos. In fact, I made a video back during Pride Month about the many pride flags used across the LGBTQ spectrum, which I've put links to both in your description and on your end screen. After artists, LGBTQ people, and middle-class college students make their place in the neighborhood in question, upper middle-class professionals, often politically liberal progressive, such as teachers, journalists, and librarians, are attracted by the vibrancy they've created. They often come in search of inexpensive housing close to their workplaces. They tend to bring their consumerist tendencies with them, fueling the rapid expansion of trendy restaurant, shopping, and entertainment spheres that often accompany the gentrification process. Then those really high up on the socioeconomic ladder bring it into full swing. Once these people have been attracted to the gentrifying neighborhood, the prices of real estate and goods and services of local businesses increase dramatically. At one point, anyone who hasn't already been displaced by the early stage gentrifiers finally is. Eventually, those who began this whole process in the first place are forced out by unaffordable rent and grocery prices. So how do we prevent gentrification from happening? Or at the very least, remedy the effects of it? One of the most notable ways local governments help prevent gentrification is through inclusionary zoning laws. These ordinances require the apportionment of some new housing for the community's original low and moderate income residents as soon as renovations begin to be made in an urban neighborhood. Unfortunately, there are few reports qualifying its effective or ineffective limitation of gentrification in the English literature. After all, the basis of inclusionary zoning is partial replacement of the local community. If nothing else, these laws keep gentrification and their effects from being as bad as it otherwise would be. Another thing to consider is tax programs to help retain longtime homeowners in an at-risk neighborhood. The City Council should pass a bill that allows homeowners whose taxes have grown by 10% or more to defer property tax payments until they sell. A particularly crucial component of fighting gentrification is promoting housing equality. To learn more about how redlining has contributed to housing inequality among low-income people of color, watch this recent video of mine all about it, which I've linked both in the description and end screen. To dismantle housing inequality and stop gentrification in its tracks, we can protect what affordable housing is available and lobby for newly constructed housing to be made affordable. We can write letters to those in charge asking for and vote in favor of policies that any new development includes a set number of affordable housing units and that the definition of affordable in our respective cities is changed into one that reflects what even the lowest income people in our communities can realistically afford. The scary thing about gentrification is that it's such a slow process and that it all starts with the people we least expect. Ordinary, relatively powerless people. That's the scary thing about most of the facets of poverty I explore in my content, as well as other dimensions of our society and culture. You'll see this again if you click the links on your screen, both of which I promise to put up now at some point in this video. This should tell you that I keep my promises and that my channel is worth subscribing to and keeping up with by clicking the notification bell.